Hello and welcome back to Turbo Fire Garage. Today we will be switching gears from Chevrolet and we'll be working on the 429 Cobra Jet for the 1970 Torino. Before we dive into the assembly, let's check the numbers and see if this is the original engine. The engine casting date is 9K18, which means October 18th of 1969. Over here, we have 9K28R. which means the engine was assembled on October 28th, 1969. Now, if we go to the assembly tag, which is right here, the engine tag here is 429-76-9K K824-A. And it means that the engine was assembled in October of 1969, which is further verification. And also, if we go over to our Marty report, the car was actually produced on November 18th of 1969. And our last clue here is the VIN number, or part of it, that is stamped on the side of the block. So with all the indications, this is the original engine for our 1970 Torino. Now let's go ahead and get the crank installed and measured. Well, I have our rod bearings here ready to go. One of them is specific at the machine shop. They did have to modify one of the bearing surfaces slightly in order to get it to work properly with the right clearance. But other than that, we are ready to go. All right, I have installed the crank and put our plastic gauge in there. On this one here, it didn't crush very well, but we have right about 2/1000. 2/1000 here as well. Center one, that is also at 2/1000. 2/1000 here as well. And it looks like we have 2/1000 across the whole engine, which is perfect for this application. All right, now that we are ready to install the main caps, I thought I would share to you what I like to do. First of all, these gaskets are directional. There is a front and there is a back. So there's a little notch here that goes towards the inside of the engine, and that has to be there. Otherwise, you're going to get substantial leaks. I like to put a very, very thin bead of silicone to help trap any leaks that do happen, but it is not required. It's just personal preference, and I like to do it. I did have the machine shop polish and balance this crankshaft. While there are some visual lines, none of them are tactile except for this rod bearing right here. You can hear it. I did ask the machine shop about that, and they said for non-race applications that are just going to be driven, there's no problem with it. If you were going to start putting boost to it or taking it to the track, it would probably be good to turn it 10 under. But since racing days are long behind this car, at least the time that I own it, I've elected to keep it as standard. So that's where we're at. I will install these after putting some driven GP1 assembly gel. I like to use the assembly gel when I don't know how long the motor is going to sit. The gel stays where you put it, and that's what I like to use. Have everything all lubed up, ready to go. ARP Ultra Torque on all the bolts, and we are ready for the final torque sequence at 105 foot-pounds. Another thing of note on these engines, you have to set the thrust before the final torque sequence. So you do need to hit the crank forward and back to set that, and then you can finish torquing it down. It has been assembled, set to 105 foot-pounds. And we have just a tiny bit of silicone squeeze out there and right there, which is exactly how much you want. And one other thing, here is where they had to take most of the weight out of the crankshaft. The back was not too far off, but the front was way far off, and they did, if you take a look at it, they did have to take quite a bit out. So anyways, it's balanced now and it's ready to go. We are ready to insert the pistons in the block. Everything is labeled and situated in the same hole it was taken out of. Camshaft installation time. And here we have the factory camshaft. This is not a new camshaft. I took the old one down to Delta Cam. They inspected it. They determined that it was a good usable core, and we could regrind it to a different specification. So what I chose was 223.7 on the intake, 229.5 on the exhaust, and 513, 520 lift. The lobe separation angle is 115.4, and that is rather wide, but that's what we had to do with this camshaft. I did not want to get a new one. I think it's kind of cool that we're reusing the factory camshaft. This camshaft here is just about the Super Cobra Jet specifications. It does have a little bit less duration on the intake and a little bit more duration on the exhaust, and same with the lift. I got a set of Delta Camshaft's in-house lifters. I'm not sure exactly where they get the lifters, but they do put a nice notch, and if you can see it, they do put a notch in there, and that just provides extra oiling to the camshaft so it doesn't go flat. So I'll get this installed and then I'll take it back to the engine. Before I start buttoning up the block and covering all of this, I did want to show you the difference in rocker arms. The factory original rocker arms are a stamped steel design. They have a 5/16 inch push rod and a rocker stud of 7/16 to 3/8. The push rod wall thickness is 65 thousandths. And what we have here are full roller rockers. The rocker arm studs are 7/16 to 7/16, so there is no taper. Also, the push rod thickness is 80 thousandths, so there shouldn't be very much, if any, deflection at high RPM for the 400 horsepower that we're looking for. So with that, start putting the motor back together.